Brethren, a warm welcome to you all. I missed seeing all of you last week, but I thought I needed to give you guys a break away from seeing me. But it's so glad to be back in your company today. I bid you all a very, very warm welcome. As we know, 2 weeks is a long time and rust can settle in, so I will once again start with some housekeeping. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted onto our YouTube page. Therefore, those of you who do not wish to be seen, please feel free to turn your video off. To avoid any disruptions, if you could also please ensure that your mics remain on mute throughout the talk, that'd be much appreciated. There will be an open Q&A session after the talk, and if you'd like to ask a question, please always use the hand up icon, which can be found in the participants section or participants tab on Zoom. Wait for your name to be called out. You may then unmute yourself, ask a question, but please do not forget to put yourself on mute again. To give everyone a chance to ask their question, if we could restrict questions to one per person, that would be great. If we do have time to ask or put second questions forward, I will once again call your names out. We are giving away, as we always do, 2 of our bespoke mugs. For a chance of winning, you need to answer the following question. All ready? In what London theatre and year did the play Mousetrap make its debut? Please type your answers in the chat section, and as always, the first 2 correct answers will win. Brethren, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you Brother Thomas Ewan Notman, or Ewan, as he is more affectionately known. Ewan is a 4th generation Scottish Mason who has been in this man's army for 33 years. Born in Perth, Scotland, just before the Mousetrap started on stage in London, his father was from Berwickshire and his mother from Orkney. His parents were married in Edinburgh in 1944 and honeymoon in Swanage in Dorset, his father serving in the Royal Artillery. Ewan started life in Crieff, Perthshire. Then he moved to Garstang, Lancashire, then Brompton, Yorkshire, Aberdeen, Orkney, and Crieff again. Then Glasgow, and now Edinburgh for the past 40 years. He's very well travelled. Ewan has regularly visited lodges, chapters, preceptories, conclaves, tabernacles of both variety, and consistories in Scotland, Northumberland, Lancashire, East and West, Yorkshire, Dorset, London, Cornwall, and the Netherlands. His talk follows his path through Masonic or through Masonry in Scotland, pointing out some of the differences between Scottish and English Masonry, and hopefully bringing us all a little more understanding. Ewan, the virtual mic is yours.
I have a problem with the screen share at the moment.
You should be able to do it now.
Okay. Right.
Perfect.
I'm not quite there. That's at the beginning. Right. English Masons can be a little confused when they come to visit a Scottish lodge. Much of the custom and practice is the same, but much different. Here I'm taking you through my journey into Masonry, giving you some of the differences on the way. I'm not going to go into the rituals or the periods covered. You can get those from the internet, speaking to others, or reading books. As there are a few Scots watching, I think it's best to stress that the views expressed here are my own. I was initiated into Freemasonry on the 1st of April 1987 in Lodge St. Michael in Crieff, number 38, which was my father's mother lodge. I was proposed by my stepfather. It was his mother lodge too. I was then passed, raised, and advanced in the lodge. Yes, the mark is done in lodges in Scotland, and it's usually the last degree of a Masonic year. I was affiliated to Lodge Holyrood House, St. Luke's, number 44, in November 1990. That's a joining member to members in England. I became the Right Worshipful Master in November 97. The lodge meets in the oldest working lodge rooms in the world in St. John Street in Edinburgh. It's now owned by the Royal Order, but it was built by Canongate Kilwinning number 2. After affiliating, well, when affiliating to a Scottish lodge, an obligation or oath of fidelity to the new lodge is taken in open lodge. Not just here's the bylaws, now you're a member. The ceremony makes you aware of your obligations to your new lodge and to your other lodges that you might belong to. You'll notice that the apron is worn under the jacket. It would be worn over the jacket if it was double-breasted. Each lodge have their own colours. Some use tartan. I have several aprons, but the main two I use are that of my mother lodge, which was my father's apron, and it's now 65 years old, and my past master's apron for Holyrood House. They confuse English Masons being provincial colours in England. Notice also in a lodge, Scottish lodge, there are no chapter jewels worn, only lodge jewels. The rule being you wear the jewels of the order whose meeting you're at. Anniversary jewels do not have to be validated by Grand Lodge. Provincial officers and Grand officers wear green. You can see there are 5 Grand officers in the picture there. But they only wear the provincial or Grand officers when they're on duty. I have seen the Grand Master wearing his lodge apron in his own lodge. Being a Grand or provincial officer is not so important in Scotland. Being a past master is more important. In a Scottish lodge, all the officers are elected each year, except perhaps one appointed, a depute or a substitute master who's appointed by the master. The master-elect chooses who he wants to install him into the chair, and that's not usually his predecessor. I chose the master who initiated me into the craft. It's considered an honour to be asked, and I have been asked on quite a few occasions. Whilst in the chair, the master is Right Worshipful Master. And although past masters can be referred to as Worshipful Brother, according to the Constitution in Scotland, it is rarely heard in a Scottish lodge. You'll normally hear something like Brother John Brown, past master. Ritual is not dictated by Grand Lodge or Provincial Grand Lodge, but decided by each lodge. There can be some radical differences. Signs and stances can vary considerably. The biggest difference that English Masons will notice is that in most Scottish lodges, the members stand to fidelity whilst moving around the lodge or standing. Holyrood House doesn't do this. Past rank in Provincial and Grand Lodge only exist as regards to the people who have had the active office. Honorary Grand ranks are given to members abroad, but are rare in Scotland, and usually for long service. United Grand Lodge of England may be the oldest Grand Lodge. However, their oldest lodge can only be dating from 1674. In Scotland, the oldest speculative Masonic minute dates from 1598. Edinburgh Mary Chapel No. 1 celebrated 400 years in 1998. The Royal Arch is very different in Scotland. I was exalted in November 1991 into Edinburgh Royal Arch Chapter No. 1. New members will normally be affiliated to the Mark Lodge within the chapter. This is usually carried out by the 3rd principal. A full mark would normally be carried out by the 1st principal. We have a short mark if we're doing all 3 degrees in one night, but this is rare these days. The Royal Arch jewel and apron are different in Scotland from that of England. The jewel is a 7-sided plug, which is obvious if you know anything about the Scottish ritual. The apron has no rank on it. Rank would be shown by a collarette. These days, it is rare to see mark aprons being worn in Scotland. There are no provincial or grand ranks in the mark in Scotland. The excellent master is carried out by the second principal, who would be addressed while doing so as the right worshipful and excellent master. One bit that English Freemasonry didn't have, except around Bristol, now given to past thrice illustrious masters in the Royal and Select. This is the passing through the veils. The Irish have a very similar degree. The Holy Royal Arch is chaired by the first principal. Most officers in the chapter are mirrored as in England, except our sojourners are first, second, and third sojourner, as opposed to sojourner, assistant, etc. The chair degrees are, as in England, the third principal being Joshua, the second being Haggai, the first being Zerubbabel. The first principal is also installed as the right worshipful mark master. The Zerubbabel elect may choose his installing officer. The chapter ritual is different under the Scottish Constitution, taking recognizance of the mark and the excellent master. It is extremely rare to see the standards of the tribes around the carpets or in the east, and the tools are not laid out on the carpet. The Supreme Grand Royal Arch Chapter of Scotland is totally separate from the Grand Lodge of Scotland, as well as controlling the mark, excellent master, and the chapter. It also controls the Cryptic Council, that is to say, the Royal and Select, and the Royal Arch Mariners. To become a Grand Officer, Grand Superintendent, or a commissioned officer in the provinces, one requires to have the 3 chair degrees of Zerubbabel, Thrice Illustrious Master, and Command Honour and Most Excellent Chief. I was honoured in the Edinburgh Cryptic Council No. 1 in 1993, going through the Royal Master, Select Master, and the Super Excellent Master. The English Royal and Select have another degree being the most excellent master. Those of us who go south or venture south are asked to take a healing obligation when visiting, so we don't tell anyone what we've just seen.
Once you're done recording your files, you can easily browse and play them back in one convenient place. You can also
sorry, you're on mute at the moment. Just give me a moment.
Or share them with friends, family and colleagues at the touch of a button. Great for collaboration. You can customize your recording settings to match your main use.
I don't know what's happening there, but I'm sure someone will. Anyway, going through the old partitions book of the Cryptic Council, I found my great-grandfather's signature because he was a member of that Cryptic Council. And last August, I joined the Edinburgh Defensive Band Cryptic Council and took the Thrice Illustrious Master's Silver Trowel degree. The regalia is an apron and a collar, and you're required to be a Scottish Royal Arch Mason. Also in '93, I joined the Edinburgh Lodge and Council No. 1. That is to say, the Royal Arch Masonry. The degree is quite different to the English degree. I was used as a candidate in a lodge of instruction a couple of years ago in England, so I'm aware of what the degree is there. We in Scotland have the degrees of the captivity or Babylonian pass, consisting of the Knight of the Sword, and Knight of the East, and Knight of the East and West. This is why the chair degree is Worshipful Command Honour and Most Excellent Chief. The installation of a command d'honneur is very similar to the English degree. I was in the chair there from 97 to 99, at the same time as being Master of the Lodge, and the regalia being normally an apron, a collar, and a sash, and you're required to be a Scottish Royal Archmason. I did the Temple grade in March 95 and the Malta grade in October 95 in the Preceptory in the Lothians. The regalia and the ritual are quite different in Scotland, although the installation ceremony is very similar. I was preceptor and prior from October 03 to October 05, and I am now very happy being the chaplain. I don't have to learn any ritual, I can read what I need, and I act as the prompt. To wear a past preceptor's jewel, you have to have a positive vote of the committee. They make sure you do chair both degrees, and before you can get your jewel. A knight in Scotland would wear a white cap with a red stripe around it. The preceptors wear a red cap with a red collar. Entry requirements are to be a Royal Archmason. My first venture into Mark Hall Masonry was to be inducted, I'm a bit previous there, was to be inducted into the Heart of Glendale Conclave 239 of the Order of the Secret Monitor, then in Morpeth, now in Cramlington in Northumberland in May 1999. There are conclaves in Scotland, but then there were long waiting lists. So I joined several other brothers and went south. I am a founder member of Thistle and Rose Conclave 484 in Berwick, now in Alnwick. I was Supreme Ruler there from 2004 to 2005, and for Thistle and Rose from November 15 to March 18, that's 3.5 years, because of bylaw changes. I found it a bit odd at first to appoint officers of the conclave, but got used to doing so. I have driven over 10,000 miles to meetings in Northumberland in the last 20 years. Last November, I was appointed an active Grand Officer, but because of the pandemic, I have been unable to carry out any of the Grand duties. I was very pleased to join in Northumberland, as I've made many good friends there, and have visited them in other orders. Also in '99, I joined the Holyrood Tabernacle 135 Knight Templar Priests in Edinburgh. I was installed as High Priest in September 2009, and am now a past Grand Sixth visitor, past Grand Sixth Pillar as of June this year. I should have been to 2 consecrations this year, one in the Netherlands and one in Lithgow, but that will probably be next year now. You are required, entry requirements are to be a Master Mason of at least 3 years. It used to be of being an installed Master, be a Royal Archmason and a Knight Templar, and to remain so during your membership. A little note to Ian Currans and to Andrew Sweeney about that. In February 2000, I became a member of Edinburgh Conclave No. 1 of the Red Cross of Constantine. The ritual in Scotland and in England are more or less the same, as they're from the same source. Once part of the same organisation, north and south of the border. The most puissant sovereign and Right Reverend Prelate, I think, are probably the most difficult chairs. You have to know the ritual well, as part of it has to be done in the dark, and quite a lot on the floor. In Scotland, in the chair, you do the Red Cross of Constantine 1 month, and then the Night of the Holy Sepulchre the next month, alternating through the year. Whereas in England, the conclaves carry out the Red Cross, and the district do the Night of the Holy Sepulchre once a year. Our regalia is different, as I found out at the Sepulchre Guard conclave in Mark Mason's Hall last September. As a past sovereign, I was the only one wearing a red cap. You're required to be a Christian and a Royal Archmason. I joined the SRIS, the Societas Rosicruciana in Scotia in 2003 into the Metropolitan College in Edinburgh. I can't comment on the differences between the SRIS and the SRIA, as I've not visited south of the border, but they're likely to be very similar. Due to illness, I've only reached the 3rd of 9 degrees. Each college does the first 4 degrees. In Scotland, the other degrees are carried out in Perth each year by invitation. Qualification is to be a Trinitarian Christian and a Master Mason. Regalia is minimal for most members, being a jewel and a tie. Members are encouraged to give papers on philosophical matters. As a member of the Order of the Secret Monitor, I was invited to join the Scarlet Cord in 2008 into conclave number 500, but had to become a member of the OSM Benevolent Fund first. I got a free transfer from conclave 500 to Northumberland Scarlet Cord conclave 559, which became Northumberland Consistory number 39 TI on the inauguration of the new order on the 21st of July 2010. I was organizing recorder for for Lindisfarne Consistory 111 in Berwick. It was consecrated in October 2015. I became the president in July 16, and since July 17 have been the recorder. The consistory carries out the first 3 degrees of, the first 3 of 6 grades. There would then be the preparation for president ceremony, usually carried out by provinces, before being installed as a president. Then one may be invited to a 4th or further grades in London just before Grand Senatus each year. The Scarlet Cord is not recognised by the Grand Lodge of Scotland, so we have to go south to join or to continue. 3/4 of the members of Lindisfarne Consistory and most of the members of Thistle and Red Rose in Brampton, Cumbria, are from Scotland. In 2018, I became a member of a lodge of the Grand Sanhedrin of Guild Lodge Masons, of purveyors, tilers, bricklayers, plasterers, joiners, glaziers, plumbers and wrights of Scotland in Glasgow and Old West Guild Lodge. There is an equivalent in England, usually referred to as the operatives. There are again 7 degrees, 4 conferred in the lodge, and the others by the Grand Sanhedrin in Perth. They use very antiquated words for some of the offices, such as Schrevene for the secretary and Christvarden for the treasurer. The regalia is an apron worn on the left hip. The size can vary a bit, and a tie and a breast jewel. You require to be a Master Mason to join. I have left out the court degree, which in Scotland has been worked mainly by chapters. I'm a member of 20 units, including a Dutch chapter, and have been in the chair of 11 of these. I still hold office in most of them. This is my personal journey so far. Scottish Freemasonry has its own characteristics, which are quite different from the English. That is the way they have developed. Neither is right or wrong, just different. They have grown from their own societies and reflect them. We have always to remember that Freemasonry is a pastime, which should be enjoyed. It gives men something to have in common so that they can speak to each other across divides, whether religious, political, or cultural. I enjoy my Freemasonry. It's given me a good reason to travel and to meet interesting people in UK, Europe, and the world. So if you now have any questions, if I can find out how to stop there, there we are. I'll try and answer them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ewan. Brethren, if you have got questions, please do use the hand up icon on Zoom. At the moment, there are no hands up. Don't be shy. I know it's been a week off. If you have forgotten how to do it, please just send me a message on the chat group. Okay, thank you. Where we at? Right, Ewan, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. If we could please go to Brother Derek. Hi, Derek.
Hello. Well, thank you for that. Scottish Masonry sounds terribly complicated. The only thing I'm involved in was I was made an honorary member of the equivalent of the operatives and of the 7th degree. But I was going to ask you, you've not mentioned anything about the Royal Order of Scotland. We have it in England. Do you not have it in Scotland?
We do have it in Scotland. Its offices. It owns the offices in St. John Street, which is the oldest working lodge rooms in the world. I have been elected as a member about 13 years ago, but have not actually joined as yet. Administrative error somewhere along the line. However, I'm not going to complain about it. It's one of only two orders in Scotland that I'm not a member of, the other being the Supreme Council for Scotland of the Ancient and Accepted Rite, which I'm not a member of either. But I'm a member of all the other ones in Scotland that are recognised by the Grand Lodge of Scotland.
So I can presume from that the Royal Order of Scotland is the same in Scotland as it is in England and worldwide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. Next, can we go to Brother Daniel, please? Hi, Daniel.
So sorry about that. I was muted. Yes, hello. Thanks for that, brother. It was really enlightening. I am from the District Grand Lodge of Nigeria as an English Mason, and as you're aware, the Grand Lodge of Scotland is very prominent in that area of the world. My question is to do with the Royal Arch. How do you treat or how do you address the issue during a visitation by an English Royal Arch Mason in a Scottish Royal Arch Lodge?
Having been the director of ceremonies of the chapter for some time, one of the things you do is ask English Royal Arch Masons if they've done the Excellent Master and whether they are a marked Mason. And if they are neither, then you ask them politely to leave during those particular sections. And that's it. I mean, it's always made sense in Scotland, the fact that you have your mark straight away. You don't worry about completing a 4th degree of going to the chapter. You have your mark, you then go to the chapter. There's no problem. Does that answer the question?
It does. I just wanted to confirm exactly how you go about it. Boys, essentially, get out.
I have actually asked some quite senior members of the English craft to actually leave our chapter while we do the Excellent Master. However, we have had a few years ago, we had several members from the Lodge and Council, the Royal and Select who came. I think it was about 14 of them we put through the Excellent Master so that they could then perform that in England.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Great question. Can we next move to Brother Dennis Wicker, please? Hi, Dennis.
Thank you, mate. Thank you much. Thank you much, Ewan, for a cracking presentation. I'm actually in Cumberland and Westmoreland, just south of the border, and I know Brampton very well, you mentioned. But one of the things I've never been able to work out, and you may have gave the answer, but there was a bit of interference when you're doing your presentation. You mentioned that you wear your aprons under your jackets. Part of, if it's double-breasted, you wear it over the jacket. Is there a particular reason as to why you do that, please?
Recently reading some bits and pieces up about Masonry and about actually the operative lodges. A reason for wearing your apron underneath is you can take your jacket off and you're straight at work. And that's one of the explanations for it. It's a lot more comfortable, and you don't have to get extensions to put onto your apron, which makes a lot of another good reason. However, I have noticed I had problems with my Royal Arch apron and had to tie a knot in it because it was made for someone who was a bit bigger than me. And the only thing you can do there is actually sew it up or tie the knot, one or the other. I
appreciate that. I do visit north of the border on a regular basis, so it's nice to see all the different colours, as you say, for different lodges. No, I enjoy my visits up there. So, but thank you very much for this evening.
Well, I could actually add to that one in that I also go to the Netherlands, or have been to the Netherlands quite a lot, and there was a lodge there, St Andrews number 285. Who wore the Edinburgh tartan on their aprons, because the Dutch also have different colours for different lodges.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you, Dennis. Next, can we go to Brother Amit Jyoti Sen, please? Hi, Amit. You take yourself off mute. Amit, you're on mute at the moment. You're on mute.
Unmute.
There we
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm speaking from Calcutta.
Welcome.
Hello. I was intrigued because your photograph in the announcement of this meeting, you were wearing, I recognized the Scarlet Cord regalia, but I couldn't recognize the sash, because that wasn't a Scarlet Cord sash that you were wearing, were you?
It was Scarlet Cord sash I was wearing.
I see. Then
I was wearing the Hamilton tartan as well.
All right. Oh, so that's a Scarlet Cord sash. All right. Okay.
I wasn't wearing anything other than that was the president's sash that I was wearing. That's why it might look slightly odd the way it was sitting, because it was underneath. It was underneath the collarette. You couldn't see the name on it.
The collarette. I mean, it was a president's collarette, wasn't it? Black.
It was black, because we're not a TI. The TI ones have they can wear the red one, the old red one, and if you might notice that the third jewel that I was wearing was maroon, not black, because I was a member.
You were a founder member of the Scarlet.
I was a member before 2010.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amit.
I happen to be a founder president of a newly established Scarlet Cord consistory in Calcutta, number 132. So
I have seen your name on the Facebook site when the histories were being given.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Amit. Bye. Next, could we go to Brother Dudley? There we go.
Good evening, Ewan. Thank you very much for an excellent talk. Speaking as a Bristol Mason, one of my several areas, you did briefly mention the sign of fidelity. I just wondered if the similarities, obviously, between Bristol, Ireland, Irish and Scottish working, we have no such thing as a sign of reverence. It's a sign of fidelity rather than a sign of reverence in certain areas. Are you the same in Scotland, or do you use the sign of reverence?
I think it depends on the lodge, and depends on your education into Freemasonry. I would say that the fidelity and the reverence are more or less the same. There's very little difference, and most people would not know the difference. So they just use the one, and that's it. I happen to know there is a difference because of what I've read and the education that I've had, if you like, in Masonry along the way. A certain director of ceremonies in Northumberland made sure I knew exactly what the reverence and what the fidelity was. That's how it goes, and it's good and it's interesting to find these things out.
Yes, I'm sure the touchers would soon complain if you got them mixed up. In my experience, anyway.
Directors of ceremony are always touchy about things, which is probably why I have so little hair left.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dudley. Next, could we go to Brother Paul Greek? You're on mute.
Thank you, Ewan. To an English Mason, the setup in Scotland and the various different degrees sounds quite complicated. One of the things I want to ask you, you mentioned that there isn't any standard ritual, say, in the craft, and it varies from lodge to lodge, so it must be quite confusing if you go from one to the other. I saw a demonstration in London of a Scottish third, and it was very violent. And would that be the same in all Scottish lodges, or would it vary from one to another?
It varies considerably from one to another. I remember my third was done by a lodge from the west of Scotland who were visiting Crieff and did the ritual that night. And I went home with bruises on both arms. And the very next meeting that I was at, there was a letter from Grand Lodge of Scotland telling people not to be so rough with the candidates. It happens, it still happens. There was, I don't know if they still do, but there certainly was a lodge in East Lothian who used to send the candidates up using a blanket, and they would regularly hit the ceiling. However, I don't think that's allowed for health and safety reasons these days. Things have changed. I haven't seen people being roughed up myself at a third for a long time now.
They were being shaken quite violently.
I just hope that doesn't happen now, but I mean, it has happened, and I don't think it should happen, especially amongst gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next, could we go to Brother Lawrence Sams, please? Hi, Lawrence.
Hi, how are you? Just a quick one, very similar to the question that came through on the Royal Arch. I saw that you're in the Royal Arch Mariner, and I'm a past, well, I'm in a Royal Arch Mariner lodge, and I'm a past commander, watch commander, etc. But I was interested, do you have a similar thing there, because it's combined, that that you have to take an oath of hail, or do you have to leave it part of the ceremony if you visit in Scotland?
If you were visiting a lodge and council in Scotland, they would try and find out whether you'd done what degrees you'd done. If you'd only done the Royal Arch Mariners, then they would politely ask you to go out while they were doing the Babylonian Pass. Or alternatively, you might like to become an affiliate and join there and actually do those particular degrees. I don't know if they're done in other orders in England or not. The Allied, I think, do something in the Babylonian. I'm not sure. I'm not up on that. But you are Worshipful Commander of the Royal Arch Mariners Lodge, and then you are the most excellent chief of the council which does the Babylonian Pass. Does that help?
Yeah, no, it helps. It makes it interesting to, if I get to travel again to Scotland, I'll see if I can visit or find a way. It might be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. And next, Ewan, you good for time?
Yeah, I'm fine.
If we could go to Eric, please. Eric Brown, hi, brother.
Hi there. Good afternoon, Ewan. It's more. I seem to find myself giving out information rather than asking questions when I come on here. The Babylonian Pass. While there's a ceremony in the Allied that's very similar, Grand Chapter in Scotland doesn't recognise it, so you wouldn't be able to do that. But if you were a member of the Knight Masons from Ireland, which has got councils in England, then you can visit the Lodge and Council in Scotland, no problem. Your SRIA ceremonies are very similar because of the origins of the societies, but where there are differences, it's because some of the Supreme Magi in England have actually added things back in, and the 4 societies worldwide are actually looking at the moment to try to bring all the rituals back together again. And finally, Grand Lodge of Scotland is unlike a lot of other Grand Lodges like United Grand Lodge of England insofar as it has a list of recognised bodies or bodies in amity which are listed in the Grand Lodge yearbook. And earlier on, Ewan, you said that the Scarlet Cord isn't recognised by Grand Lodge of Scotland. It is. But we can't have any consistories in Scotland. You've got to go south for them, as you have to do with the Allied Masonic degrees, whereas officially the Order of Athelstan isn't in that list at all. So Freemasons in Scotland should, strictly speaking, shouldn't come south of the border to take those degrees at all. Although it would appear that a blind eye is turned to that. That's all.
If you see some of the people who are in those orders from Scotland, you'll see that they're quite high up in many of the orders in Scotland.
Yeah.
You're talking about the amity list that is produced by the Grand Lodge of Scotland, and as I say, the only 2 that I'm not a member of, which is on that list, is the Royal Order of Scotland and the Ancient and Accepted Rite. We have other orders in Scotland, like the Square Men, which is not really talked about. As I say, the Scarlet Cord, the Grand Lodge of Scotland are not in amity with them as such. I think that's all I have to say on that one.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you very much for that. It's always good to gain more knowledge. Ewan, thank you very much. That is all the questions you'd be pleased to know answered. Unbelievable. It's really good insight. I mean, speaking from somebody who has not learned just yet about Scottish Masonry, it's so interesting. It's so varied as well. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it. A lot to take in, and probably worth another few sessions, to be honest with you, to really go through and the narrative description of Scottish Masonry. But thank you ever so much for your time. I'm sure a lot of our brethren here today have learned a lot as well. Just before we do go, brethren, if I could just announce the winners for the question, which was, in what London theatre and what year did the play Mousetrap commence? Some really funny answers, because I did say London in that question. So I had answers from Nottingham to Derby to, so I'm not sure where you all think London is, to be honest with you, brethren. It's quite shocking, really. But we had 2 correct answers, and that was, the year was 1952, and the theatre was the Ambassadors Theatre. It not long after moved to St. Martin's, but for those of you who will recall, it was held at the Ambassadors Theatre, and of course was written by the wonderfully gifted Agatha Christie. So thank you to Paul Ginger and to Steve Hyland. Well done to you both. Brethren, next week we're back on 6 o'clock. Be there or be square. We are delighted to welcome Most Worshipful Brother Paul Weldon Johnson, Grand Master of the Masonic Order of Athelstan in England, Wales and its provinces overseas, and also the Sovereign Grand Master of the Ancient Masonic Order of Alfred the Great. So pop it in your diaries. Normal time, 5:15 meeting room will open, 5:50 we'll close it, and 6 o'clock we'll start. Ewan, thank you once again very much for your time. Brethren, good night, good bless. Stay safe, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Amit.
Good night.
Right, thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night, Ewan.
Good night.
Well, Ewan, before you go, are
Yeah.
can you ask a small, simple question? You touched on all degrees in Scotland, with the exception of KT. Do you think there's any truth in the jewels, all the bits and pieces from the Knights Templar when they left the Holy Land and came into the Rosslyn Chapel? Work that one out if you can.
There is a suggestion. I mean, they did run